is it now the right time that we also require, when one enters the government through an appointment or an elective position, to perhaps declare, do you have a relative within the fourth degree of consanguinity who is a member of a terrorist organization? Who is a member, who is an affiliate of an organization that seeks to overthrow the Republic of the Philippines? Mr. President, a lot of us have applied for visas coming from several countries. If you apply for an Australian visa, you will be asked, are you a member of a paramilitary group that seeks to overthrow your government or any government overseas? Of course, your answer will be no. If you apply for a US visa, Mr. President, you will be required to answer, are you a member or affiliated with a group inclined to overthrow your government? Or are you affiliated with a terror group? Bakit po sa atin walang ganyan?
I simply want to state, Mr. President, that believing in an ideology which may be different from the majority, in layman's terms, believing in policies and philosophies which may be left of center, so to speak, does not make anyone subversive. In fact, in 1992, it was former President Fidel V. Ramos who repealed the anti-subversion law. Having said that, Mr. President, I have pushed for the resumption of peace talks. We know that the comprehensive agreement on socio-economic reforms is on the agenda, and this was a legacy of former President Ramos, and I hope that the peace talks can be revived, can ensue, so that the common goal of leaders of our country, whether we are elected in the Senate or even working with a grassroots organization deemed subversive or left by government but not really proven, can work together towards more equity, peace, and authentic, real reforms in the countryside. I will never judge Chair Popoy de Vera, just as I will never judge his sister. I do not know the issue, and I do not know her personally. All I can say is that having celebrated National Heroes Day yesterday, there are many heroes in our midst whom we see and who we do not see or know. Even heroes who may be associated with the CPP. I declare that I have worked with the National Democratic Front, and I am not ashamed of it. I have worked with them, not for them, in my role as a journalist, along with then Minority Leader Aquilino Pimentel. As a young senator, I have worked for the release of captives, both in the police and the military establishment, from the mountains of Davao to the jungles and mountains of Sorsogon in Bicol and in Lianga, Surigao Sur. I have agreed with them on many subject matters close to our heart, and I'm certain that our brilliant lawyer from Cavite will agree that all the elements, the four aspects of CASER, must be pushed. Having said that, Mr. President, I would like the anti-terror law to be reviewed. I recall, and I hope my vote was recorded correctly when I was in the House of Representatives at the height of the pandemic, because I did not vote in its favor. And I do not recall what law or what pronouncement of government has declared the Communist Party of the Philippines or similar organizations, movements, beliefs, associations, could be declared as what? Enemies of the state? It's so difficult to identify that. When if we see and study what they actually believe and want, it is social justice. It is really uplifting our people from poverty for decades without bearing arms, of course. And the disposition of forces is part of the four elements of KASER. I am in the military establishment. I studied GSC and NDCP. I proudly belong to the AFP Reserve Corps, being a full colonel. I fully respect and associate myself with some of the views and the concerns of the good senator. However, I also would not pass judgment and label, perhaps, certain organizations whose beliefs may be different from the general majority. But when we look at it, we bear similar objectives, vision, dreams for our people. I say that not in contrary to my good friend Senator Tolentino's manifestation today, or those who wish to associate with them. I stand here as someone who has worked with the so-called left of this country and was admired many of those who share the same vision for a country, who may belong to those who are considered left of center. And there is nothing wrong with that, Mr. President. It does not make anyone subversive. In fact, there's no subversion law. Now, if we are called terrorists for believing in certain beliefs which are considered left, then that's a longer debate altogether. All I'm saying is that while I appreciate the manifestation of the good senator from Cavite, I also believe that heroes like Dr. Jose Rizal, who was considered subversive by the Spanish, who was killed in Laguna, is our national hero. Having said that, Mr. President, I thank the good senator from Cavite for raising this very important issue that has propelled discussions and emotions. I do not totally disagree with you, but I think this is a very important subject of discussion, and we will never completely agree with each other. That's why we value our democracy, and that is the reason why we are the Philippine Senate. I will leave it at that, Mr. President. Ang gusto ko lang sabihin po, maraming bayani, hindi man natin kilala, maaring nasa Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao, maaring nasa bundok, at hindi alam kung paano bibigyan ng kapayapaan ang ating bansa, pero isa lang ang ating adikain na matanggal na natin ang matagal na nating nararanasang kahirapan at marating na natin the long evasive peace. It has evaded us for decades on. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, just a minute of response. I thank the good distinguished lady from Capiz for her remarks. Indeed, I am not ascribing any fault on the part of the personalities and perhaps the names that I mentioned. But just for the record, Mr. President, the CPP-NPA has been declared as a terrorist organization by the European Union, the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, and a number of other countries, Mr. President, and including perhaps a greater bulk of the members of the UN Security Council. Just for the record, Mr. President. But again, I appreciate and thank the distinguished lady from Capiz, Panay, for her response. Thank you, Mr. President.
May we recognize our distinguished colleague, Senator Risa Ontiveros. Salamat kaayo, Mr. President. I would just like to thank the Senate President pro tempore for her passionate manifestation in response to the privileged speech of the good gentleman from Cavite. I thank her, Mr. President, as a member of this Senate who is myself a social democrat, a democratic socialist, someone who proudly counts herself in the ranks of the democratic left, or what the good Senate President pro tempore called left of center. I thank her for her manifestation, Mr. President, as someone who worked for many years also in the peace movement, and particularly in the government peace negotiating panel with the CPP, NPA, NDF. I thank her, Mr. President, for her manifestation as someone who has my own deep disagreements with the CPP, NPA, NDF. And I thank her, Mr. President, as the widow of a PMA graduate, Mista of Senator Doroy de la Rosa, a PNP officer with whom I came to share the dream of security sector reforms for a reformed and modernized national police, without which, like a modernized and professional armed forces, no state can effectively and well govern the people. Maraming salamat at mabuhay po kayo, Senate President pro tempore, for the overall spirit of your manifestation. Salamat kaayo, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is not an interpellation. This is just a plain manifestation that this humble representation would like to be associated in all the issues being raised by the good gentleman from Cavite and Tagaytay City. Lahat ng laman ng kanyang privilege speech, Mr. President, I am fully supportive of it. Because alam naman natin na naging issue yan ngayon, yung security. Ang purpose naman niya doon na kailangang i-declare natin yung ating mga relatives na nasa terrorist organizations, hindi para gipitin yung tao na nagdi-declare, kundi for the security organizations to classify that this person ay merong kapatid or anak na nasa terrorist organization, para alam nila how i-treat ito. Lalong-lalo na sa atin sa gobyerno, like for example, cabinet member. Supposed to be that cabinet member is given the highest level of security clearance because secretary siya. But then again, pag malaman ng security community na may kapatid pala ito na nasa kabila, then they know how to treat. Kailangan siguro pwedeng i-limit natin yung impormasyon na ibigay natin dito, lalong-lalo na yung mga top secrets, dahil nga baka merong mangyari na unknowingly ito'y maa-access ng kanyang kapatid na nasa kabila at magagamit ito against us. So yun lang siguro ang purpose niya, Mr. President. Again, nothing is wrong. Sinabi nga ni Senator Amy Marcos kanina, yung sitwasyon ng Sumil Brothers. Yung si General Sumil ay aming superintendent sa PMA. Pero sumalangit nawa yung kanyang kaluluwa. Patay na po siya. Napakagaling yun na opisyal. At napakagaling na piloto. In fact, he was the presidential pilot of then President Ferdinand Marcos, Mr. President. And napakagaling niya. But wala siya magawa. Yung kanyang brother ay naging malaking personality doon sa CPP-NPA. That's beyond his control, Mr. President. Pero at least, alam ng security community na mayroon siyang brother na nasa kabila. So that is why, the reason, of course, ni Senator Tolentino na i-declare natin yan, kung kung alam mo, i-declare mo para alam ng security community paano ka i-treat. Alam nga naman sabihan, ipapaalam namin sa iyo na meron kaming dinedevelop na mga missile system dito na mga drones na pwedeng titirahin yung mga kalaban. Hindi ka dapat maka-access ng mga top secret information, Mr. President. So that's all. Just would like to support my partner, Senator Tolentino, sa kanyang privilege speech. That's all, Mr. President. Thank you very much.